Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Indian Council of World Affairs for the 43rd Sapru House lecture on the theme, The Power of Small, the Maldives Story. Today's program is as follows. The opening remarks will be given by Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, Director General, ICWA, who will also be chairing the program. Thereafter, the lecture will be delivered by our esteemed guest, His Excellency, Mr. Abdulla Shahid, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Maldives. At the end of the lecture, the Q&A will be moderated by Chair. With this, may I now invite DG ICWA to deliver her opening remarks and conduct the proceedings. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are honored indeed to welcome His Excellency Abdulla Shahid, Foreign Minister of Maldives, to the Indian Council of World Affairs to deliver the 43rd Sapru House lecture on Power of Small, the Maldives Story. Minister, Excellency, you are not new to this series of lectures. We fondly recall your earlier visit here in 2021 as President-elect of the UN General Assembly to deliver the 38th Sapru House lecture on the theme Presidency of Hope. Excellency, your tenure as the President of the UN General Assembly, your steadfast commitment to move forward the global agenda at a time when the world was dealing with the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic were deeply appreciated. You spoke of hope when there was despondency, and you emphasized the need to have courage to meet challenges. With enormous skills, Excellency, you provided leadership to the UN General Assembly and earned international recognition. Your stellar role brought to the fore the positive role Maldives plays in multilateral and regional platforms, particularly in articulating the perspectives and concerns of the SIDS, the small island developing nations, including their climate vulnerability. In fact, Maldives' own approach towards climate-resilient development is worthy of emulation. We look forward to your lecture today, Excellency, on the power of small, the story of Maldives. This is a story of fortitude with promise of great hope. Maldives' economic rise and its rapid transformation into one of the leading tourist destinations in the world is phenomenal. It was Maldives' deft handling during COVID pandemic, which was a balanced approach of caution combined with the openness for tourists that stood as an example to the world. Today, Maldives continues to surpass their own tourist arrival targets. For the Indian traveler, Maldives is one of the most significant sought-after tourist destinations. And for Maldives, India has remained the top source market for the third year running. Minister, you have been a principal architect of the revamped India-Maldives friendship and cooperation that has indeed expanded rapidly. The continuous engagement between the leaderships of the two countries has been the driving force of this relationship. Maldives is a close friend with whom India shares cultural, economic, and people-to-people linkages that go back to centuries. It is natural, therefore, for our trade flows to be reflective of those close ties, and today, India is the top trading partner for Maldives. Our development cooperation is reflected in the number and scale of projects being carried out under grant and concessional credit throughout the islands. Further, India-Maldives friendship is characterized by training initiatives which have expanded to cover and include parliamentarians, judicial and civil services, customs audit, ICT, education, and healthcare training programs. Capacity building has emerged as a central pillar of our cooperation. India First policy of Maldives and the Neighborhood First policy of India have acted in concert for the benefit of our peoples. Maldives occupies a special place in India's Neighborhood First policy and is a key partner for India in the Indian Ocean region. India-Maldives friendship is also a source of peace, stability, and prosperity for the region. With these words, may I now invite His Excellency Abdulla Shahid, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Maldives, to deliver the lecture on the theme, The Power of Small, Maldives Story. I welcome you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Singh, for that very generous introduction and also the very warm welcome that you have accorded to me. I was very happy that you have clarified the topic that I'm going to be speaking on, the power of small, the Maldives story. If I have left only about the power of small, then many of you may wonder that I was going to speak about myself. I wasn't going to do anything of that sort, I can assure you. It has always been a pleasure to visit Sapru House. I believe this is my third time speaking here. The last time I visited, almost 2 years ago, as Ambassador Singh has said, I had just been elected to the presidency of the General Assembly. I spoke here about my plans for the presidency of hope and the challenges I envisioned, including challenges to multilateralism and the international order. I believe it is safe to say that the presidency was in many ways what I expected, but also full of unexpected challenges. But one thing is clear. The presidency was certainly an opportunity like no other, especially for a small island state like the Maldives. Prior to the Maldives, only 5 other small states had served in that capacity. And if we look beyond the General Assembly presidency, let's say, for example, the Security Council of the United Nations, out of the 60 countries that have never served on the Council, 27, nearly half, are small island developing states. The numbers are even more startling when you consider that 20% of the United Nations membership are small island developing states. And it is easy to understand why small island states like the Maldives, or even small states whose numbers are a bit higher, find it difficult to stand up for these roles. Our resources, human and financial, are limited. Our reach is limited. The cost of engagement is higher, and so our access is limited, making us less effective and less visible. Often these are questions about our ability to serve effectively and our capacity to engage constructively. That was certainly the sentiment when the Maldives applied for the membership of the United Nations over 57 years ago, just a month after our independence in 1965. When the matter was considered in the Security Council, some members of the Council questioned the ability of very small states to carry out the obligations of the United Nations Charter. They cast doubts about our ability to undertake the responsibilities of a responsible member of the international community. So much so, they considered a separate category for us, associate membership without ability to vote. So after all this, how do small states survive in this context? How do small states overcome their limitations? How do small states turn their perceived weakness to their advantage? These are questions we keep asking. In the nearly 58 years since the Maldives began implementing an independent foreign policy, we have adopted many strategies to adapt our circumstances. And I would like to say those strategies have been quite successful. And I call them the 3 Ps. First, we adopted a principled approach, the first P. The first foreign policy decision of the independent Maldives was to join the United Nations. The question is, why? Other countries have taken different routes at independence. Some prioritized cultivating relationships with their neighbors or joining regional organizations. Many took their time in joining the United Nations. But small states have often prioritized the United Nations over others. Considering, for example, Singapore, another small island state which also was admitted as a member of the United Nations on 21st September 1965, the same day as the Maldives. Singapore applied for memberships on 3rd September 1965, less than a month after it separated from Malaysia on 9th August 1965. This is the case with several small states as well. And when you think about it, the reason is very simple. For small states being accepted into multilateral organizations, of which, of course, the biggest is the United Nations, becomes an international endorsement of their sovereignty and integrity. It becomes an acceptance of the country as an equal member of the international community. It is international law and the principles that govern multilateralism that give small states an equal footing. Before the law, it doesn't matter how big or how small you are, how rich or how poor, you are afforded equal rights, and you take an equal responsibility. At the United Nations, every country has one vote and 6 seats in the General Assembly Hall. This is also why small states have not hesitated from taking on the big issues. Let me give you one example. One of the biggest shocks to multilateral system in recent years has been the war in Ukraine, which began in February 2022. This was during my presidency of the General Assembly. The Security Council, as you would know, that was mandated to address these kinds of issues was deadlocked. No action could be taken. Some declared that the end of the United Nations itself. But there are inbuilt mechanisms for these kinds of situations within the United Nations working methods. The Security Council referred the matter to the General Assembly under the Uniting for Peace resolution, and the General Assembly met in emergency special session format and considered the first resolution on the war in Ukraine. 140 countries voted in favor of the resolution. Now, what is interesting is that out of the 141 countries that voted for the resolution, an overwhelming majority were small states. Small states that they stood for principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. Small states stood up for multilateralism because small states realize the power, the importance of principles, that it is these principles that offer the space, the opportunity, and the platform for small states to act on equal footing. And when violations of these principles occur, small states don't hesitate to stand up to defend themselves, even at cost to themselves, because they are standing up for themselves, for their rights. This is what the Maldives has done as well over several times. Mercenaries attacked the capital city of Male in November 1988. They were not successful. With the timely support of India and our friends, our National Defense Force thwarted the attack. But it also exposed a grim reality, the extreme vulnerability of countries like us to such attacks. We put our faith in the principles of the United Nations Charter. With this issue, we went to the United Nations with a resolution entitled Protection and Security of Small States, asking the Secretary General to continue to pay special attention to monitor the security situation of small states, given that they are particularly vulnerable to external threats and acts of interference in their internal affairs. We put our faith in multilateralism in the international system, in the principle that guide the international community for our protection and for our safeguarding our independence. So that is the first strategy, being principled. The second strategy is we adopted a pragmatic approach. A pragmatic approach dictates that we do what is best for the Maldives, what serves our national interest the most. The Maldives, as you would know, is the heart of the Indian Ocean. The strategic location comes with serious responsibility and serious exposure to competing external threats. The Maldives recognizes and understands the crucial space we occupy in the Indian Ocean. We understand our responsibility in maintaining peace and security in the Indian Ocean. We understand our role in it. Because we have always recognized that the fates of the Indian Ocean islands and the Indian Ocean itself and that of ours is connected, that a strong, prosperous, and democratic Maldives is necessary for maintaining strategic stability in the Indian Ocean, and that a peaceful, secure, safe Indian Ocean is crucial to a prosperous Maldives. This is why we have cultivated and maintained strategic and mutually beneficial relationships that will enable us to contribute to the efforts in holding order in the Indian Ocean. Relationships that will build resilience within our country, whether that be economic resilience, climate resilience, or institutional resilience. A key partner in this regard is India. One of the first acts of President Ibrahim Saleh took after he took office was to meet the Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi, who, as you know, was present at the swearing-in ceremony of the President in November 2018. And since the relationship between our countries have been exemplary, India's support, the generosity of its people, is felt in every aspect of the Maldivian society and Maldivian economy. And India is contributing in a big way to the development of the country, to the development of resilience in the Maldives. We have also long since recognized the indispensable role that the United States play in the Indian Ocean as well. And we enjoy extremely important and mutually beneficial partnerships with countries such as Japan, Australia, China, and a host of other countries in striving for economic and social development. What we seek is to not pit one country against the other or one relationship against the other. What we seek is partnership and cooperation for our stability and prosperity, which in turn contributes to the region's stability and order. This is what I mean by a pragmatic approach, the second strategy. The third strategy, the third approach we have used in our foreign policy is, of course, prioritization. Like many other small states, the Maldives has always prioritized our issues in its foreign policy implementation. Because of our small size and that of our foreign service, we simply cannot be everywhere and do everything. We choose the right battles at the right time, and the choice is often dictated by national priorities, the pragmatic approach. And climate change has always been on top of our agenda. As early as 1987, the Maldives was talking about sea level rise and global warming, because we had already started seeing the impacts. Devastating tidal waves had engulfed the capital city in 1987, signaling the beginning of a changing climate. And President Gayoom, who was the Maldives president at that time, alarmed by these unseasonal and unusual waves, took up the issue of vulnerability of low-lying island states to environmental hazards and the need for global attention and response to these issues to the first to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Vancouver in 1987. There he received a lukewarm response. Undeterred, he took the message to the United Nations General Assembly and to the summit of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation within a period of less than 1 month. The Maldives continued to persist. It was in Maldives in 1989 that the small island states, 14 of them, with several experts and resource persons and observers of donor countries, met for the first time to discuss sea level rise and small states. The need to address the adverse impacts of sea level rise and environmental degradation was highlighted in the meeting's declaration, the Malé Declaration on Global Warming and Sea Level Rise. And it was in the Maldives that these small countries agreed to form an alliance and work together. Following this meeting and in the coming months, in the lead up to the Rio summit in 1992, the Maldives, along with Trinidad and Tobago and Vanuatu, led the efforts to form the Alliance of Small Island States, now more dearly known as the AOSIS. Today, AOSIS is the premier organization regarding all things related to climate change and small island developing states. Maldives has been an active member of the alliance since its conception, and Maldives has also chaired the alliance from 2015 to 2018. Today, on climate change issues, we can safely say we are a thought leader and a bridge builder. For instance, in the last COP, we played a bridging role. We played a bridging role between countries which led to a successful conclusion, including the long-awaited agreement to establish the Loss and Damage Fund. And today we are on the Transitional Committee helping to shape that fund. In addition to climate change, we have always prioritized the welfare of small states, always spoke up for small states. One of the key initiatives we took very early on at the Human Rights Council when we were first elected was to establish a trust fund for the least developed countries and small island developing states. This trust fund supports diplomats from LDCs and SIDS, in particular those without permanent representation in Geneva, to participate and contribute to the work of the Council. To date, this fund has supported the participation of over 100 SIDS and LDCs in Human Rights Council sessions. My dear friends, the Maldives story showcases the journey of how a small state navigated the perils of international diplomacy through adapting and adjusting. It demonstrates how a small state can defend itself and defend others and their interests in front of bigger states and in global settings. Above all, the Maldives story is proof that size does not determine destiny, that small does not mean unable. It is proof of the power of small, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister, for your very enlightening talk on the power of small in the story of Maldives. You have clearly brought out three principles, three approaches that are fundamental to your dealing with the world. One, principle; second, pragmatic; third, prioritization. So clearly we see a very well-defined foreign policy approach of the small island countries. You've spoken of the importance of multilateralism and the rule of law for smaller countries. But yet, as you finally concluded, size does not matter. You are important and you will continue to be important. With these, Excellency, with your permission, you have agreed to take some questions. So I'll open the floor to questions. I will take 3 questions at one time. Introduce yourselves. No commentaries, but straight questions. All right, I recognize a hand right there to begin with. Okay, and then there,
Yeah.
and then there.
Good evening, sir. Uh, yeah. Sridhar from the Asian Age and the Deccan Chronicle. My question is that the term of President Soli is nearing its end, and there's going to be elections shortly in the Maldives. What are your views on that? And there's been a very well-known geopolitical competition and tussle between India and China for influence in the Maldives in the last several years. So how do you look at this situation in the context of the coming elections? Thank you.
Right there, Dr. Athar.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Excellency, for your lecture. I am Dr. Athar Zafar, a research fellow at the Council. So my question is related to multilateral organizations. Maldives has become a full member of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states. And recently it has shown interest to become part of other regional initiatives like ASEAN and also very recently the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So what place the regional groupings or multilateral initiatives have in the Maldives diplomacy? Thank you.
No, right at the back. Yes, you raised your hand first.
Thank you, Excellency. I am Gulbin Sultana from Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. My question is regarding Maldives' withdrawal from Commonwealth in 2016. Now, after President Soli came into power, Maldives again joined Commonwealth. So my question is, when Maldives was not a member of Commonwealth, how did it impact Maldives? Thank you.
Excellency, may I? This will be the first round, then I'll take the next 3 questions in a round. Thank you, Excellency.
Thank you very much for these questions. Very interesting question about the upcoming presidential elections in the Maldives. Well, the first term of President Saleh is nearing an end. President Saleh's presidency will continue in a second term. I'm confident of him winning a second term. Of course, we are a democratic country and elections will be held on schedule. There are a number of candidates who have expressed their intention of contesting in the upcoming elections. And I can assure you that Maldives, as in 2018, will be able to hold transparent, free and fair elections, and we are consolidating democracy, human rights, good governance, and many of the other good things that the democratic society in the world is aspiring for. We believe we have become a part of the family of the democratic nations around the world capable of holding free and fair elections. So we are excited to see the elections go through on September 9th. You did ask about a tussle between India and China in the Maldives. I can assure you that Maldives and the current government in the Maldives does not give room for such tussles in our country. As I mentioned to you in my introductory remarks, we are not in the business of playing one against the other. We are friend to all and enemy to none. Our partnership is with everyone. Of course, the geographic realities, the past experience, all these are taken into account, and that is why we have such a special relationship with India. India is our immediate next door neighbor, and I have said this more than once. For the Maldives, the international 911 seems to be India. When we dial the international 911, India responds first, not only because it is our next door and the largest neighbor, but because I believe that the people of India collectively has a very large heart, and their response is always much appreciated and received with much gratitude in the Maldives. The second question about multilateralism, why Maldives is engaging and joining regional organizations, and why it is expanding its role internationally. We believe that since we became independent in 1965, and as I said in my initial remarks, our first action internationally was to join the United Nations, because we believe that recognition by the international organizations is equal to recognition internationally. But then that phase of Maldives has moved on. We are now in the business of engaging with regions for economic and other reasons. Now, many would ask, why did the Maldives join the AOCP? Effectively, Maldives, being in South Asia, becoming a part of a group of nations who are from Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific. How did this island country in the Indian Ocean, being part of South Asia for so long, suddenly become an African state? Now, that's a question that many might ask. But there are reasons why Maldives applied for the AOCP membership, and the Africans very well accepted us as one of their fellow members. For many reasons throughout the last 10-15 years, we have found ourselves in a very difficult position as far as access to the European market is concerned. Once we graduated, many of the easy access to the European markets were denied to us. But these are enjoyed by all other island nations, our competitors in the Indian Ocean. Our first and foremost product is fishery. We have been talking with the European Union for our access to the European market on our fishery product, which after we became graduated, we were being charged 24% duty on it. But through the AOCP, we are able to have a window to the European market without the duty. Of course, we are continuing our dialogue with the European Union, but then all of us know how large the EU bureaucracy could be. And for us, we are not ready to have a wait-and-see game, but also explore all the possibilities. And that is why we have joined the AOCP and be part of this very large family of African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries. And when you look at the AOCP, Africa, having over 50 member states, is one of the largest blocks of countries, and it is going to be the largest economic power base in the future. And we want to be part of that family. In the Caribbean and in the Pacific, even though we are in the Indian Ocean, we have countries with similar experiences. The small states, the island states, we have to go through with the same kind of experience. So we want to be part of them as well. So through the OSCP, we found a family which we have been pushed out geographically, but in every other aspect, we are part of them. So we wanted to be part of the AOCP. On the Commonwealth, it was painful when the former government decided to leave the Commonwealth. because the Commonwealth brings together a family of nations who value democracy, human rights, good governance, and all these things that are being promoted by the common desire to better the welfare of the people of these countries. And the reason why the former regime left the Commonwealth was when the Commonwealth declared that the government at that time was transgressing these principles of the Commonwealth. When we left the Commonwealth, we lost the opportunity of Commonwealth scholarships, Commonwealth youth fellowships, Commonwealth sports engagements, and many, many others, including the access of travel, visa-free travel to many of these countries. In addition, we were part of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, exchanging good parliamentary practices between us, and many, many other Commonwealth subsidiary bodies. I had the great privilege of raising the Maldives flag on February 19th, 2019, and it was a great honor that we are now back in the family of the Commonwealth. I hope that answers the three questions.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'll take two questions here in the front first from Ambassador and then from Ambassador of Guatemala. Ambassador. And then I'll come here, yes.
Thank you very much indeed, Honorable Minister. Maldives, you have always been known for being a front runner in the fight against climate changes. Looking some years ahead, how do you see, should we be optimistic or should we be kind of giving up status? So what's your take on that?
Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Guatemala.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Vijay. Thank you very much for convening us today. It is a great pleasure to see His Excellency Abdulla Shahid. My name is Omar Castañeda. I'm the Ambassador of Guatemala. And I'm very grateful. I want to take this opportunity not only for thanking you for the great work that you did when you were President of the General Assembly. Your presidency was called Presidency of Hope, and we remember very well the importance that you gave also not only to the different categories that you say, the LDCs and SIDS, but also to middle-income countries as mine that were affected after the pandemic and COVID and the pandemic of the COVID-19. You said also on the importance, and you highlight that very clearly, the importance of climate change. According to your experience, what you saw also when you were President of the General Assembly, do you think eventually this topic could also be included in the agenda of peace and security in the Security Council? Thank you so much, and it is a great pleasure to see you again. And thank you for giving me the floor.
Ambassador. And one question right here.
I think we should really speak out here that first Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru, he had always talked in terms of Afro-Asian countries. So it's not wrong that Maldives has joined the Afro-Asian community. Now, secondly, you are also the president of SAARC, and my two visits to Maldives, I noticed a lot of Bangladesh people there who are another small country with small managerial and small units. So are you having any agreement with the Bangladesh country in your making of power of small to help them and help each other out besides India?
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Freddie, good to see you again. Yes, Ambassador was the Maldives. This is the second time, I believe. Yes. Good to see you. Yes. On climate change, of course, we are going through, since 1987, we have been talking about climate change, and we intend to never give up, because we can't. I am an optimist. I see that the effort that we have been making since 87 reaping fruit now. As I said in 1987, when President Gayoom spoke at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the reception he received was lukewarm. But since then, if we fast forward to today, everyone who wants to speak about climate change wants to speak on a platform of small island states. They want us to be part of the debate. And the impact that we have been able to make since that day has been enormous. In 1992, when we reached Rio, we have been able to come together as an alliance. We had 27 member states at that time, and when we started speaking in one voice, collectively, with a stronger platform, we were able to include not only a separate chapter on small island developing states and call for a conference on SIDS, but also include this in a chapter that said small island developing states and the oceans. The small island developing states, because we were small islands, we were also large ocean states. And at a time when oceans were totally neglected, we were able to bring the concept of protecting the oceans into our chapter. And today, we are very, very happy to see that oceans are being refocused and is being addressed as a lifeline for human survival on the planet. So, Ambassador, I'm very optimistic. We are going to survive. The small islands are going to survive. The larger countries are going to survive, and humanity is going to survive. But for that to happen, we need to understand that we have to act collectively. And I hope that humanity prevails. Thank you, Ambassador from Guatemala. I always recall my visit to Guatemala during my presidency at the General Assembly. And the experiences that you are going through in that part of the country, of the continent, especially with sargassos and the environmental hazards that you are facing. I think and I believe that we need to bring not only the small island states together, but also the middle-income countries. Because the way that the middle-income countries, many of us who have been graduated, are being treated, unfortunately, is like you being a good student in school, and madam, when you get promoted, you are seen as a good student, but you have to be the only kid who has to go to detention every day. We have been continuously punished for being good, for using the aid that we received well. And that is the experience. So in this current financial system of international financial system, a lot more attention needs to be given to middle-income countries to have this, not to have this experience of being punished continuously. You mentioned about the Security Council, whether the issue of climate change is going to be in the Security Council. I have participated since 2005 in every debate that was held at the Security Council in different capacities, as Foreign Minister, as PGA, and others. And I firmly believe, and the Maldives firmly believes, that there is a security aspect to climate change. If we continue to ignore that, we will continue to ignore the issue in its entirety. Maldives was instrumental in bringing the human dimension of climate change to the Human Rights Council. And this was in 2007. I had the privilege of submitting this issue to the Human Rights Council in 2007 as Foreign Minister. And when I finished my speech at the Human Rights Council, an ambassador from one of the larger countries came, met me and said, "Mr. Minister, you are very courageous." I said, "Thank you very much, much appreciated." And then he said, but this is not going to be easy. And he proved right, because it took from 2008 to 2021 to get this process through from the Human Rights Council to the General Assembly. And I had the singular privilege and pleasure of presiding at the General Assembly to adopt the resolution on the human dimension of climate change. There is a lot of differing opinions on the security aspect of climate change. But the small states and many others believe that there is a genuine security aspect to this. The sooner we start addressing it, the better. On Bangladesh, one of our fellow SAARC countries, a very good friend, and with whom we have a number of agreements. But we do not have an agreement on what you mentioned about. But Bangladesh and Maldives, we enjoy excellent relationship. We love them, but we would like to beat them in football.
Thank you so much, Excellency, for your responses. It fully justifies your presidency of hope. Your questions always are, your answers are always optimistic and generate hope. I'll take another set of 3 questions. The first to raise hand was right there, Pragya Pandey. She's been putting up her hand repeatedly. Then I'll take a question from Ambassador in Morocco, and then right here, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your talk.
Louder.
So, my question is regarding maritime security, because both India and Maldives, put this agenda as a priority agenda of maritime security. So, as more and more countries, you see that major player powers are engaging and increasing their outreach in the Indian Ocean region. How do you see Maldives will continue its engagement with the major powers, at the same time secure its own maritime security related interests in the region?
Thank you. Second question, Ambassador from Morocco.
Good afternoon, Excellency, and it's always a pleasure to see you and to get insights from you. I will probably move away from the questions and then think of the development of Maldives. Many people don't know that we have a special relations for centuries, and we are proud to have that specific relation between our 2 countries and our 2 nations. My question is, especially after COVID, the vulnerability of countries have been shown differently. But it has become much more important when it comes to food security, to, I would even say, food sovereignty. And then as Maldives is a very important touristic state, all the developments that happen for new islands are for the tourism. But isn't it also a good thing to be able to have its own food security by developing some of the islands only for the providing foods, especially that almost the foreign currencies that are earned by Maldives is also injected outside and then probably are not used much more. It's a reflection which I'm like soliloquizing somehow, what I would think probably could be also a very good program of development, especially that now gardens can be not only flat, but can also go up, and then Singapore is a very good example to follow. So my question is there any programs in the minds of the politicians and then policymakers in Maldives to do this important step into ensuring its food security? Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And a question right here.
Hello, my name is Lazar Vukadinovic. I'm the Shard Affairs of the Serbian Embassy. I think I have a $1 million question. So having in mind the Security Council reform, I was wondering if we could get your insight as to the progress, especially having in mind that it has been just recently transferred to the next session. The IGN process has been transferred. So if you can give us your insight as to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you very much. On the Indian Ocean maritime security issue, which is very sensitive to the Maldives, we are always very aware of our geographic location. From time immemorial, we have been there. We have not been able to move ourselves away from where we are. So everyone who traveled from Africa or the Gulf into the east during ancient times, they navigate looking at these stars, and they end up in the Maldives, get their water and whatever they can get, move on. So it has been a safe haven for many. And as colonization took over in the Indian Ocean, we experienced some of it. We were colonized by the Portuguese in the 15th century. We entered into a protectorate agreement with the British in 1887, and finally became an independent state in 1965. Throughout all these experiences, what we have learned, two things. Foreign powers, they come, they bring in their conflicts into our region, and then after centuries they leave. And when we look around, we are still there. We can't move. So this is the experience through which our current policy is made up. Given the fact that peace, prosperity, and stability in the Indian Ocean is essential for peace, prosperity, and stability in the Maldives, we will take this responsibility very seriously. We would not contribute to any effort by anyone to destabilize the Indian Ocean. We have good relations with everyone, and what we tell our friends is not to bring conflicts into this region. Let us work through the established mechanisms, be it IORA or any other organization, to make the Indian Ocean a stable ocean, a prosperous ocean, an ocean of peace. And for that to happen, as I said in my introductory remarks, we feel that, and we know that the Maldives is the heart. And for any thing to function well, we need the heart to function well. And we want the Maldives functioning well. And we will keep, as I said, our responsibilities very, very seriously. On the vulnerabilities of small countries like the Maldives, yes, we experienced during COVID very starkly how vulnerable we could be when it comes to food security. Not only the Maldives, but larger countries also experienced it. But smaller countries went through very, very challenging time. And that is why we are focusing more on food production. Government recently has announced allocating islands for agriculture purposes. For a long, long time, we have always thought ourselves, our islands, being too small for agriculture, the soil being too alkaline for agriculture, that nothing will grow. But today, technology has reached a level where, again, size doesn't matter. We can go vertically, and we can grow in different climates. So Maldives intends to invest in food security much more than it has done in the past. But when you look at food security globally, it is a shame that while the world produces many, many times over to feed the world population today, it is the waste that is contributing to a food shortage around the world. So there needs to be more concentration when it comes to food security on waste, eliminating waste, on focusing on how to use what is available. And sir, Security Council reform, yes, that is a $1 million question. I'm very happy to announce that this time at the General Assembly, the international community has been able to come together and agree on many important aspects of the Security Council reform. They have for the first time agreed that it could be webcast. The discussions could be webcast. They have agreed that this time that it could be, the discussions could be on paper, written down. Yes. So if one thinks that these are major achievements when it comes to Security Council, then yes, we are on the right track. The Security Council is so outdated today. And that is why we have seen in the face of the Ukraine war, the Security Council coming to a deadlock. It reached a level where nothing could move. The entire multilateralism, the entire United Nations was, for some time, seemed to have faced the fate of the League of Nations. But we were able to come through, out of it. The Security Council has an entire continent that is not represented in the permanent seats, Africa. The historical injustice that has been done to Africa needs to be corrected. The political reality of today is so different from 1945. Unless we make these essential changes to the Security Council, the United Nations Security Council will not be able to perform its primary responsibility of maintenance of international peace and security. So we need to be able to answer your $1 million question by expediting the work at the UN. During my presidency, a group of countries came up with the veto initiative. The veto initiative meaning that whenever a country exercises its veto at the United Nations Security Council, within a given period of time, the President of the General Assembly convenes the General Assembly, and the country which exercises the veto is given an opportunity to explain to the membership why the veto was exercised. That has increased some degree of responsibility of answering to the general membership, but it does not solve the entire issues that we are facing. I'm hopeful that the member states will take these issues not only through the IGN, but also through the process of the new agenda that has been formulated by the Secretary General following the 75th anniversary declaration.
Thank you, Excellency, for your very detailed response. I think the question of reformed multilateralism, the whole question of food security, all of them very important questions. I know there are a number of hands that were raised, but Excellency, I'm afraid I know you have another appointment. We can't take another round of questions. So to all those who raised your hands, I apologize, but I do want to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency, Minister Abdulla Shahid, for coming to Sapru House, for giving the lecture, and for taking several questions on a range of topics. And I think we all have benefited from his responses. May I request all of you to join in giving a hand to Minister.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of ICWA, I would like to take this opportunity to thank His Excellency, Mr. Abdulla Shahid, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Maldives, for sharing his views on the theme, The Power of Small, the Maldives Story. I also take this opportunity to thank the audience for their valuable participation. I invite you all to join us for high tea in the foyer. Thank you.